I've been directly involved in the launch of over a dozen multi-site campuses through the churches I've led, and half of them have been in movie theaters. I'm convinced that every church leader should consider using a theater for your next campus or church plant. They're flexible, culturally relevant locations, typically in the center of the community that you're trying to reach. Regal is the only theater company with a dedicated team of full-time consultants ready to help your church launch and succeed in a movie theater. Check out regaltheaterchurch.com for more information on locations your church could use.
Welcome to the unSeminary podcast. Are you looking for practical ministry help to drive your ministry further, faster? Have a sinking feeling that your ministry training didn't prepare you for the real world? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others in pursuit of stuff that we wish they had taught in seminary. Buckle up and let's get started with this week's unSeminary podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the unSeminary podcast. So glad that you decided to tune in. I'm so glad that you're here today. We've got David Cederquist on the line. He's from Brookside Community Church, and they've been doing some really cool things, some really interesting partnerships. They're a multi-ethnic, multi-generational community in Indianapolis, in Indy. So glad to have you on the show today, David.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No, this is going to be wonderful. I wonder if we could start by you kind of giving us a bit of the Brookside story. Tell us about your church.
Yeah, so I came here in October of 2014 and was brought in by a large megachurch that was stewarding this church, Brookside Community Church. And really, Brookside Community Church was not meant to be planted as an urban church, but more of an urban outreach. Mm-hmm. Northview at that time, Northview Church in Carmel, Indiana, which is a multi-site campus, was looking at the scope of their ministry and was doing a lot of outreach work internationally. But when they looked at their broken city, Indianapolis, they said, we're not doing anything for Indianapolis. And so in 2007, a group of Christians with the outreach pastor at that time started coming down and doing outreaches within the park that is just 5 blocks north of our church currently. And they just started to gain a ton of traction from a lot of people that lived in this neighborhood. This is a very broken neighborhood. About 65% of the kids live in poverty. About a third of the housing is abandoned. Mm-hmm. There's high drug crime, high violent crime. We are actually, this month was rated by the Indy Star the most dangerous neighborhood in the city of Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. And we are one of the 5 target areas for IMPD for the most attention of the week. And when it comes to this, about 10 years ago, they just started loving the neighbors really well. And it kind of turned into an urban outreach that unintentionally turned into a group of Christians meeting together. And then they started plopping outreach people from Northview, trying to keep this church going. But about 3 years ago, their last leader that was here was just not working at that point, and they decided to do a national search. And so Brookside has historically been a community, Brookside Community Church has been historically a church that was built of the people of Brookside and the surrounding neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And when I came here for a survey trip in September of 2014, what I saw was that this church was not just serving the outside and the neighborhood in the outside, but that the neighborhood was in the church. Mm. And doing church planting in Denver before this, I just thought it was a huge opportunity to really create true reconciliation. Us, white and elderly Filipino lady and some Hispanics mixed in there, and they trusted me to come in and become the pastor in October of 2014. And so now, ever since we've been here, God has just brought Northview and us and our partnership to the point where there's true unity. Before, there was a lot of leadership gaps, so the leader would often look at Northview and their big systems and their big ideas on what ministry should be, and they created a lot of division between an urban centric model of ministry and a suburban attractional model. And for us, I came in here and I says, well, if we're going to play in the same sandbox and we're going to do it together, then we have to figure out how to do it in unity and in peace together. And so honestly, when I came here, I automatically started reconciling a lot of the relationships that were broken. Our family had beefs with their family. And God just started to do amazing things. And as we sought unity and peace with a very, very powerful, different church than us, we began to see God do some amazing things in opening us up to ministries that we never thought we could create or produce, all because we have the support of an 8,500 person church at this time right now. And so I don't know how much you want to know about Brookside and the programs, but that's really how we got here.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we jump in that, I'd love to hear more about the relational stuff that went on here to because I think people talk about partnership, but the thing I've been struck by kind of looking in at your relationship here is I think it's more than just a like, oh yeah, we're partnering together. It's at a pretty deep level. You know, kind of get us inside that. What has that looked like? How are you making that work well?
Yeah, so when I came here, the board was made up of mostly Northview volunteers that have been dedicated for 6-7 years, and all of them truly are committed to making this work. Northview could have easily just said, oh, didn't work, and they casted this off. But when I came here, before I came here, I had serious conversations with the board and said, listen, if this is going to work, there's some things that you made mistakes with our family at Brookside that you're going to have to reconcile, and you're going to have to hear their grievances. You're going to have to hear how they felt when you replaced a leader or you made a decision over them and you didn't allow them to be part of this conversation because they truly feel that this is their family, but you made all the decisions. And so when I came here, they were willing to walk through those reconciliation factors and own the fact that they made mistakes. And that was one of the biggest healing portions of me coming here in October of 2014, is that they were willing to own the fact that they made mistakes and allow for our family to actually know that they are important and that their voice matters. Because when it comes to urban ministry, especially among the poor, they don't feel like they have opinion. We don't have people coming down here in their privilege and apologizing for years and years of oppression that has happened within our neighborhood. And so when it comes down to a large affluent church, when they look at Northview as money bags, right? But then they're sitting here they can barely pay the gas bill and the water bill, and they're all shiny up there, but we're the ones that are struggling, but they're making the decisions. We automatically had to make a transition and say, listen, are you willing to trust me? If you're hiring me, are you willing to trust me to lead us to where we need to go and trust that God has our best interest in mind? And so it really started with Northview just saying, hey, listen, we are done with 8 years of making mistakes at Brookside, and we desperately just want to do good ministry in the neighborhood. And so what was nice about coming is we got a fresh start to really be innovative in our programming. There was not much happening at that point. We had a food pantry that was serving about 60 families in a week, but it was very unhealthy. And so all the riffraff would come on third Sunday. Every drug addict that wanted to sell the box of Cheerios they got that week so that they could do their quick hit, they were coming. Yeah. And it was just there was unhealthy things, but we initially just got, I had 50 people, and we got a fresh start. And so in that fresh start, and then in the reconciliation that happened, they just trusted me. And I felt that trust immediately, because this is what the board did. They said, how often do you want to meet? And I said, I want to meet every other week. And they're like, okay, we'll come in for an hour and a half every other week, and we will be dedicated to the mission of what's happening at Brookside. I said, guys, when I call for a reconciliation meeting, you got to be there. And they were there. And when it comes down to the trust that was regained, because our people are not as complicated as most people think they are. And all they want to be do is honored in the right way. And when you honor them in the right way, they are your best friends forever. They will never leave you. They will always be committed to you and loyal to you. And that's how the urban core, that's the uniqueness of doing ministry in an underprivileged neighborhood. And so once they actually saw that this what they did was they really, our congregation, through me as their pastors, their lead pastor, just started to say, okay, so let's see how Northview responds to the leader that we chose with them, and that they, and really through the decisions that I made for our family in leading them with me, that's where trust began to be built. And so a lot of our relationship was just, they made enough mistakes, and all they did was just like, listen, we want to trust you, and so let's build trust. And so on my part, it wasn't about throwing in their face that they messed up for 8 years. It's like, let's just start new. And that's really how, the synergy really started.
Interesting. So now, fast forward till today, what does the ministry at, Brookside look like? The kind of, how often, what is that looking like when you say, the kind of the scope of your ministry? We obviously talked about the food pantry. What does that look like?
Yeah, so in January of 2008, Wells Fargo called me while I was at the Children's Museum with my kids, and they said, "Hey, you want a free house? It's 2 blocks down the street from your church." And I'm like, "You're giving free houses?" I'm like, "I want a free house."
Yeah.
So they said, all we need to know is, what are you going to do with it? And at that time, our ministry was very fragile. I had one other staff member on my team, and it was just like, there was no way we were going to do family development. There was no way we could do some really cool things that we did in Denver as we church planted in the urban core there. And so really what I did know was reentry. And so I said, listen, we'll throw 5 guys in there. We'll do a 12-month discipleship program, and we'll see what God does through that. Well, 2 months later, we got an $80,000 started in his philanthropic work. And he said, listen, I believe in what you're doing. And by October of that year, 2015, we had a full-fledged reentry program that is now facilitating 5 guys in their discipleship, that has expanded to partnerships with the Department of Corrections, where the Department of Corrections has actually finally stated that because of faith-based programming in prisons, that violence and crime went down. And so they're asking questions on men and women who are reentering society. How are we creating a faith-based opportunity so that they don't recidivate back into prison? And so they are partnering exclusively with us. We have a Monday night worship service where sex offenders, anybody on a violent case can come, because there's no kids here, and they can worship Jesus. But also parole is here. The IMPD is here. We are partnering with other agencies to create a hub around reentry and a family around reentry, because the best individuals to reenter together are actually individuals who are doing it themselves. But then also, it's not about being part of a large church like Northview, is that we can steward mentors for these men and women. So we are taking white privilege, literally, and we are saying, listen, sit down with this murderer, this sex offender, this thief, this drug addict, and be a mentor and walk their parole with them. And in the clash of their idea of what reentry is, and then meeting Andrew, meeting Joey, and so realizing they're real people. God is sanctifying Northview in the process of them getting involved with the poor and those who have been incarcerated, and those who we are called to build a bridge unto God for their success. And so, but then also youth development. We have a huge children's corridor within here where we're at Brookside neighborhood. And I've looked at every after-school program while I was here in the beginning 6 months of my ministry, and all of them are just re-educating kids that come from a very traumatic home. And if you know anything about trauma within the urban core, it's like a smoke detector going off in a child's mind. And they are literally, it's this beep, 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 beep all the time, and all they're doing is trying to react to this beep and stop the beep. And so some of them are violent, some of them talk back, some of them get angry, some of them get passive. They all react very adversely to the trauma that's around them, because they've experienced sexual and emotional and physical brokenness and abandonment and hunger and all of these different things. And they saw their aunts and uncles get shot. They have literally walked in light of this trauma, and they're reacting in this way. And in after-school programs in our neighborhood, they're re-tutoring them from class, but they're still failing the I Read 3 test that the state of Indiana requires. And if you do not pass the I Read 3 test, you do not go to the 4th grade. And so 30% of our kids in our schools are passing the I Read 3 test, which means 70% are being held back. We have 12-year-olds, that are just hitting 4th grade.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
Right.
So how do you fix this problem? Well, in watching a documentary called Chicagoland, I met this man named Rob who talked about the power of play in the urban core. And we basically have created a whole play-based, trauma-sensitive coaching after-school program that is serving about 60 kids right now. But the reason why we're able to do 60 kids is not because of the staff and my budget. It is because we have a partnership with Northview, and they come down and we train them to coach these kids and be a caring adult relationship, because a key factor with a child creating the safe zone where they can go into development brain, not trauma brain, is a caring adult relationship. And as we partner with them, we are hosting 60 kids each 8-week session. And what's interesting about being part of Northview is this: the reason why it works is because we listen to them and they listen to us. We say, listen, this is what we want to do, but how can we make this work, right? And so the typical after-school program works the whole semester from August to December. But being stewards of all of these men and women who want to come and help us, Northview has said, listen, week pods. And so a volunteer knows exactly what they're getting into, and we can treat it like a mission trip. So we're telling coach mentors to be here 1 or 2 days, and we want all 8,000. And they don't know this yet, but we want all 8,000 individuals to pick one 8-week session and come down and influence a child's life being a coach mentor. And so we host basketball, robotics, we do coding, we do all of these different things in after school. And so we have that. But then also, Wells Fargo's came back to us and said, listen, we love what you did with Isaiah House. We're going to give you an 8-unit apartment to start family development. And so, and
amazing.
I could sit here and tell you so many more stories of how God has brought all of these things in play, where we are now doing reentry, we're doing Brookside Community Housing, and there's this food cooperative that we've created that gives dignity to every single person who has food insecurities, where they serve 2 hours within our ministry, and when they serve 2 hours, they get their pantry card and they get to walk through our pantry and shop for $80 to $120 worth of food. And we're having individuals that have 6th grade educations that are the most simple people. They're going home and they're saying, one of our family members who is married, there's very few marriages in our church, but there's this woman who is very simple in her mindset, and her husband came up to me on Sunday crying, and he said, my wife has never done anything for our family like she did in bringing those $80 worth of groceries home. Wow. And she said, Brookside wanted me to help them. And it was just simply her cutting out stuff for children's ministry for Sunday morning, and us just loving her and embracing her and bring dignity to her. And you know what? Every single week she comes back. And that's what this has to be about. But we could never, ever, ever do what we're doing without the support and the love and the care and the financial stability that Northview brings for us. And we feel like we're the most we are the most privileged, and we're just blessed by the opportunity to do what we do.
That's amazing. I wonder if there's been so much we could pull apart here. What would you say to a church that's listening in that may say, you know what, we'd like to form a partnership like this. We're interested in learning. Obviously, part of what they can do is reach out and talk to you. But what would you say would be some initial steps? Maybe either in an urban church or maybe a suburban church. What would you say would be some of those initial steps?
Man, you have to be willing to get over the baggage of your culture. I mean, I think from when it comes down to the urban core, we often think it's just a black-white issue. But oftentimes I think that the reason why it is today is because it's a suburban-urban issue. I think oftentimes the reason why my community was left the way it was, Brookside, in the 70s was because of white flight. and everybody wanted safer schools and wanted to get out of the violence. And so when they left the neighborhood, when Christians left the neighborhood, they left them to themselves. And so no wonder it's going to take 30, 40 years of our ministry to even see any kind of turn in the neighborhood. Right. And so they have to get over the fact that they have to repent of the fact that we've left this neighborhood, and we now have to re-engage on a level of sacrifice that is gospel actually transform a community the way it needs to be transformed. And so first it's realizing that there's a problem and that they're willing to utilize their privilege and lay down their privilege to be able to come into the urban core. But then also it comes down to them submitting to leaders here. I don't think that every leader in the urban core is trustworthy. I don't. I think that there's the reason why urban and suburban partnerships, because a lot of the pastors think that they are doing good ministry. And then they look at the megachurch and say, I don't do that kind of ministry because it doesn't work here. And so our partnership would not work because you're so different. But there are some things that we've learned from Northview in communication, in simple strategies around organizing our programs and all these different things. They rub off to us and we rub off to them. And partly how we rub off to them is they are now hosting campus churches in prisons that are called, it's an organization called God Behind Bars. And the reason why they are hosting campuses are because of the influence of our reentry program on the life of the church. And our little small piece of the kingdom of heaven right here just influenced a big animal called Northview. Interesting. And so now we are partnering with prisons to the point where when guys are coming back to Marion County, those are being funneled into Brookside Community Church. That's true partnership right there. So they're willing to sacrifice themselves for the brokenness of their neighborhood, which is they have prisons in their backyard. Right. And so it's about just mutually connecting, but then also a large church has to be willing. This does not work for free. This does not run for free. Our building is about an $80,000 liability a year, and we only get garner about $40,000 to $50,000 in tithes a year.
Yeah,
you see what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And so, they're willing to help us fund the needs of our old building, but also their people get to come in and serve the poor in our neighborhood through our building, and so they steward our building too. And so there just has to be sacrifices on all parts, but it's not about us knowing what we're doing and them knowing what they're doing. It's us going, what does God want us to do together? Very cool. And let's trust some leaders that are doing it well.
This has been great. Is there anything else? I'm hoping today people will reach out and get a chance to get connected with you and just kind of dig into this more. But is there anything else you'd love to share before we move on with the rest of our episode?
Yeah, I think I would love to see some churches that are in wealthy counties that are part of, larger than 5,000 that would love to partner with an urban church. I think that if we were to reproduce models, not necessarily programs, but the model of larger churches stewarding autonomous urban churches and bringing partnership together, I truly believe that if we were to see that happen in other major cities around the country, I think that even in the divide that we're seeing politically, if the Church of Jesus Christ stands united and is seeking the peace of each other and is seeking the peace of their city together, I just really believe that it would be an expression of the gospel that people need to see and the world needs to see, that we're willing to, even in our privilege, come down and serve the people that Jesus would be serving today, and for urban churches to steward those relationships well to the point where they're training and they're equipping individuals to not hurt their ministry, but to come in and really effectively see transformation within a broken neighborhood like ours.
This is the unSeminary podcast. Stuff you wish they taught in seminary.
We're going to jump into the lightning round. This has been just a great conversation today. I hope you've been leaning in and being inspired really by what's going on here in this partnership between Brookside Community Church, a fantastic urban church making all kinds of positive impact, and Northview. Well, let's jump in with these questions. These are the same questions we ask everybody that's on the show. David, what is an online resource you're using these days that's helping you out?
online resource.
Yeah, like a website or, a tool of some sort that's helping your ministry.
That's a tough question, brother.
Okay. Well, why don't we move on to the next one? How about this? How about what's a book you've read in the last 6 months, to a year that's maybe had an impact on your thinking or ministry?
Yeah, Merciful by Randy Neighbors. He is a gentleman that I have a ton of respect for. He's pastor emeritus at New City Fellowship down in Chattanooga. I visited him about 6 years ago in his ministry. He's doing great multi-ethnic urban ministry. I don't know if it's connected to a larger church, but he's a man who's created a CDC, and just his book, his memoir of his ministry, highly influences what we do and how we care for individuals for the long haul, because it is not about quick transformation in the urban core. Really, it comes down to, this is a 5, 10, 30-year relationship, and you need to garner it well and be very merciful to those around us. We can't expect transformation on our understanding of transformation. God has to do that work. And so Randy Neighbors is a wonderful mentor and a wonderful man that I would totally want everybody to know about.
Nice. What's another ministry that you're looking at these days that's kind of inspiring you? You mentioned New City. Are there others that you would look to and say, hey, they're doing a great job?
Yeah, I think Lawndale Community Church, it's CCDA, Christian Community Development Association. They are stewards of churches that are serious about doing work with the poor, and they are a parachurch organization that gives you a philosophy and a framework to do that kind of work. And so even suburban churches benefit from the ministry of CCDA and allowing them to really think through the issues of poverty and see how they can engage it on a really healthy manner, and they're willing to help you steward those things. So CCDA is definitely a great ministry. Plus, they live it out in their own church community and their medical community and all of those things.
Very cool. Well, I'm sure leading in your church takes a lot of time, effort, and energy, and it takes a lot out of you. What do you do just for fun when you want to kick back, relax, have a good time? What does that look like?
Man, I got to be honest with you. I love Disney.
Oh, nice. Good.
We love Disney World. And so we're headed there for a vacation because we're heading down to a wedding and we're just going to hit 3 days on Disney. I do love golfing when I get a chance, and I just love playing with my 4 kids. So I'm a big kid at heart, and I love Skittles.
Nice.
That's about what you get right there.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you being on the show today, David. If people want to get in touch with you or with the church, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can go visit us at www.bccindy.org. You can email me. My email's on the our staff page, and we'd love to hear from other churches that would be wanting to walk this journey of urban-suburban partnerships.
That's great. Thanks so much. Appreciate you being on the show today.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's unSeminary podcast. Don't be shy. We'd love to connect. Check out unSeminary inbox. You can sign up at unSeminary.com, and we'll send you helpful training resources every week. Plus, you'll gain immediate access to our exclusive members area with tons of resources you can use. Connect with Rich on Twitter @RichBirch or through email rich@unseminary.com. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode at unseminary.com. It includes links to what we talked about today and more. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Did you enjoy today's episode? Drop by iTunes and leave a review. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's unSeminary podcast. Join us next week when we'll learn more stuff we wish they taught in seminary.